Coming up on this week's show, George yodels his way to victory in Austria, from Pitlane to P1 for Lionspeed GP in the Spa 24 Hour, and a Kiwi scores twice in the US. And no, I'm not talking about the World Cup. It's Sidepods and Splitters, episode 6. Let's go. Let's get straight into it with Formula One, and everybody's favourite hall monitor George Russell has taken his long-awaited second victory of the season at the Austrian Grand Prix after leading pretty much the entire race, having held off the disappointing Ferraris off the line and then a late-charging Max Verstappen for the second half of the race. Russell set up his victory with a very dubious pole position in Saturday's quali session after Max dropped it into the kitty litter and into the wall at the final turn on his last Q3 run. As is to be expected when a driver is trying to peel himself off the wall, Antonelli backed off to give what looked like a Ferrari front row lockout, but then old golden balls himself, George Russell, comes sailing on through to grab a last gasp pole. Telemetry would later show he lifted about the same amount as a 14-year-old with his first time at the gym, but as is every single borderline decision post-2013, it went Mercedes' way, and Russell would gleefully smile and wave to the crowd like he'd just solved the Middle Eastern crisis. Russell on pole ahead of Leclerc and Hamilton, with Kimi in 4th and Max 5th. Race day would be super hot. Hot enough for George to drag out his ridiculous looking jacket again. Seriously, whoever lets him leave the trailer looking like that has the best sense of humour. Anyway, and questions of reliability, especially with the high altitude and thin air, would be asked of all the turbos, brakes and drivers. Russell managed to hold off the normally fast starting Ferraris off the line, while Kimi tried to take turn 1 via Zurich, and then nearly made it to Munich before finding the apex at turn 3. The squabbling Ferraris allowed Russell some breathing space up front. Hamilton would get past Leclerc, but not before nearly taking them both out on several occasions, and F1 finally joined every other major sporting category in the world by finally using drone to capture some spectacular footage of the cars going through 4, 5, 6 and 7. Another Antonelli excursion at turn 1 would see him pass Leclerc, only to redress, but in the meantime allow Verstappen to overtake both into second position. Max would then chase down Lewis and get him on lap 11, followed by an epic half-lap battle that they then repeat another 10 laps later. With the earlier mentioned heat making the Cadillac brakes hotter than Sergio Perez's mum's habanero tacos, both caddies would be in the pits after lap 2. Carlos Sainz would park his Williams on the pit straight after what can only be a worry for Mercedes with another electrical issue. Side note, those old enough to watch F1 in the 90s and 2000s would remember the old hydraulic issue, which teams would use to not blame an engine expiring. I suspect electrical could be used in the same context nowadays. Anyway, the VSC came out, but it didn't really benefit anyone, as the only leader to come in was Kimi, who'd made his stop just before the virtual safety car could take effect. Hamilton also took the opportunity to come in for softs. Leclerc compounding a tough race by slipping down the order, first to Piastri, then teammate Hamilton, and later Hadjar and Norris. The ADO boost that, as well as other upgrades Ferrari brought, really not having the impact that Tifosi had hoped for. From there, Max would try and chase down Russell to no avail, and Kimi would try and chase down Max to no avail. Russell claiming his first win since round 1 in Australia to further close the gap to Antonelli, while Verstappen records his best result of the season in second. So to the standing, and Kimi's lead at the top closes to 40 points, while Russell jumps above Hamilton. The McLaren duo jumps above Leclerc, who falls back to 5th. The Constructor stays the same, with Mercedes opening up the gap to 102 points to Ferrari, with McLaren giving themselves some breathing space over Red Bull. Alpine staying 5th, with Racing Bulls closing in their recent run of form. The circus moves to Silverstone this weekend with round 9 for the British Grand Prix. 69 world-class GT3 cars, 132,000 screaming fans, and 24 hours of absolute racing chaos. The 2026 CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa just proved once again why it's the biggest, most unforgiving sports car race on the planet. From a pole sitter played by bad luck to a jaw-dropping comeback that defied all the odds, this year's race was a total rollercoaster. The drama started long before the green flag, when blistering heatwave conditions pushed both drivers and machinery to their absolute limits. At the start, the pole-sitting number 51 AF Corse Ferrari looked completely untouchable, controlling the early hours with pure pace. When night fell over the Ardennes, the race turned into pure survival mode. We saw massive shifts in strategy, the underdog SLA Audi team with a bold strategy call to briefly lead at the quarter-way mark, only to suffer a heartbreaking crash in the dark. By midnight, it was a multi-manufacturer war. The Winwood Racing Mercedes-AMG stepped up, controlling the halfway point, while the heavy hitters like Rowe Racing BMW's fleet suffered brutal tyre punctures that shattered their hopes of an overall victory. A 24-hour race doesn't truly begin until the clock hits midnight. And at Spa, the second half was an absolute graveyard for the frontrunners. If you think endurance racing is just a long cruise, then the final 12 hours in the Belgian Ardennes prove that it's a high-speed chess match played with zero margin for error. As dawn broke on Sunday morning, the pole-sitting number 51 AF Corse Ferrari was still very much in the hunt despite earlier setbacks. But the Spa traffic monster finally bit. A brutal mid-morning collision left the leading Ferrari with bodywork damage, completely shattering their rhythm and forcing them out of the immediate fight for the lead. With the Ferrari wounded, the race looked like it belonged to the number 48 man-filter Mercedes-AMG. They played a flawless tactical game all night, turning the race into a high-stakes defensive masterclass at the front of the field. But the real defining moment of the second half happened in the pit lane at around 8:30 AM. The race transformed into a game of strategic chess. While the Mercedes tried to manage their stint lengths, the hard-charging number 80 Lionspeed GP Porsche and the number 22 Schumacher CLTR Porsche threw down an aggressive undercut. It worked perfectly. The number 80 Porsche leapfrogged both the leading Mercedes and fellow Porsche rival. Factory driver Thomas Preening jumped back into the cockpit and immediately began laying down qualifying style laps to build an absolute cushion at the front. Just when it looked all wrapped up, Spa threw one last curveball. A late race safety car compressed the entire grid, erasing Preening's hard-earned lead and giving the man-filter Mercedes one final shot of victory. But under intense pressure, Preening absolutely nailed the restart, instantly rebuilding a gap. And after 24 hours and 541 laps of unrelenting drama, the Porsche crossed the line just 12 seconds ahead of the Mercedes, with the recovering number 51 Ferrari fighting back to salvage a phenomenal third. A 9th overall win for Porsche at Spa, and one of the greatest endurance wins ever as the Lionspeed Porsche climbed an incredible 68 positions to take the win starting from pit lane. And finally to NASCAR, Shane Van Gisbergen is officially a road course cheat code. SVG just pulled off an absolute masterclass to win the 2026 NASCAR Cup at Sonoma, securing his 8th career road course victory and tying Tony Stewart on the all-time wins list. Early on it looked like Ty Gibbs raced to lose after he swept both stages, but SVG's crew executed a perfect stage flipping strategy, sacrificing stage points for ultimate track position. It allowed the Kiwi to lead a race-high 74 laps, but the final stint was pure survival as his tyres started screaming for mercy. In the closing laps, Chase Briscoe hunted SVG down like a man possessed. With 4 laps to go, Briscoe mistimed a downshift, giving SVG breathing room. But on the very final lap, Briscoe lunged back, getting within inches of the leader at turn 11. Van Gisbergen held his ground, crossing the finishing line by just 0.35 seconds to lock himself into the playoffs. So that's it for a massive weekend of motorsport. What was your highlight? The hugely popular George Russell's win, the greatest comeback in endurance ever, or SVG doing SVG things? Let us know in the comments. As always, make sure to follow us on all your social media feeds at C&K Motorsport. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really does help us. Thanks for watching, and as I always say, keep it on the black stuff, and we'll see you at a racetrack near you soon.